AfriKili family, Global PAC nation. Yesterday, during a visit to the White House, where President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, was invited for a talk in the Oval Office, well, something absolutely baffling happened. If you thought the meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, in the White House was a disaster, well, you didn't see anything. Because what we all witnessed with President Cyril Ramaphosa, I think exceeded our wildest imagination. For some reason, Donald Trump continued pushing his false narrative about the persecution of white South Africans called Afrikaners. So, why exactly is Donald Trump continuing to push his false narrative? What are his objectives? But also, more importantly, how should the Global PAC respond with regards to this blatant attack against Black South Africans when it comes to the narrative? So, there you have it. Let's fasten our seatbelts. Let's dive in and let's get to work. AfriKili family, Global PAC nation, such a pleasure for me to be here once again in front of you on this Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. I hope all is well with you, your families, wherever you're tuning in from. Before we get started, let me thank all of you for your continued support to the Global PAC show since we began our live concept. As a reminder, Global PAC stands for Global Pan-African Community. So we discuss issues that affect the entire global Pan-African diaspora. So people of African descent, whether it's in Africa, in the Caribbean, African-American communities all over the world. So thank you very much for your support. If you have not done so, let me just ask you to please take a moment to click on the subscribe button. Only takes you a second, but once you do that, it helps this channel grow tremendously. And it allows you to also become part of the community, this growing community, and you allow us to reach the objectives that we've set for ourselves in 2025. So thank you very much for your support, and thank you very much for continuing to tune in. All right, enough said. Let's go straight into it. So today we will talk about what unfolded in the White House. I think by now, this subject has been covered so massively across all media platforms, internet, regular mainstream media, and I'm sure you've come across it radio one way or another. But more than spend time on just rehashing what happened, just in case, I'm just going to spend a couple minutes summarizing the event. But then very quickly, we're going to move on into the why part. That is really what I think would be valuable for our platform, is the why. Why is the narrative presented the way it is? With every communication, there is an agenda, whether it's manipulation, whether it's propaganda, disinformation, or educating people on the truth. Communication, especially coming from high levels of power. Like when we talk about presidents of nations, those are what we call bully pulpits, right? Where essentially you have all the cameras in the world looking at you, especially when you're the president of the White House. So narratives have a very specific objective. And so I would like to really try to unpack that so we can come to a certain understanding. I have my hypothesis, and I'm sure you have an opinion too. So it'll be interesting to discuss that so we can see the why things are happening the way they are. Because honestly, it is bonkers, right? We will talk about it and we'll see. Jesus, what happened was just unbelievable. All right, so in terms of what exactly happened, again, I'm assuming all of you have seen it, but in the event where you have not, well, we have a visit from this. Here you have President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the president of South Africa, who is known as a big negotiator because, during the end of the apartheid regime, apartheid segregation, that was a big racist movement in South Africa, where essentially the white minority installed a system of oppression, of racism, of brutality that killed thousands of South Africans. And so when that system was being fought, but towards the end of it, Cyril Ramaphosa, who was the president of the union, ended up being one of the chief negotiators, negotiating against the whites elite in South Africa, and they ended up winning. So the side of Cyril Ramaphosa obviously won, and then apartheid ended up being abolished. So here he is with his counterpart, Donald Trump, who invited him at the White House. So as he comes, Cyril Ramaphosa, and his team, they came in expecting a confrontational meeting because of all that had happened. We'll touch upon it a bit later, but there were clear tensions between the two nations. So at least the way the South African delegation presented this meeting, it was an opportunity to come to the White House and reestablish good relationships and good ties with the White House, with Donald Trump of the United States, because of some of the tensions that have been unfolding between the two countries. Lo and behold, as the president is there with his delegation, Donald Trump, surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, because Donald Trump, after all, is a master when it comes to communication, or at least setting up the stage. And this was definitely set up, obviously. Donald Trump asked his aides to dim the lights, and then there's a screen in the back, and he starts playing a video. The video that he plays features this guy called Julius Malema. Julius Malema, who is a firebrand politician in South Africa, is definitely not part of the government. But Donald Trump plays videos of this individual, Julius Malema, who sings a song of, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. And so Donald Trump wants to utilize the video of Julius Malema to prove that there is a genocide happening against white South Africans in South Africa. So there's a video for 5 minutes. That video is available on, if you go on the White House platform on X, you will be able to play that video. It's obviously widely available on the internet as well. So Donald Trump plays videos of Julius Malema for 5 minutes. It also includes pieces of Jacob Zuma, who was the previous president of South Africa, who was a very corrupt individual, another demagogue who, thank God, was booted out of office. But yeah, so he plays those videos. So Donald Trump, by doing that, by setting up this stage, lights are dimmed, cinematic, the video is playing. He wanted for the world to see that, look at the atrocity being committed, and you have people like this that are chanting to kill the white people, because his chant again was saying, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. Boers are, the white descendant of colonizers in South Africa. So he was chanting that. We will come back to it later to unpack this, and so we can understand also the context of that song, because that also was blatantly over-exaggerated and taken out of context. But I will bring you all the elements. So anyways, so Donald Trump plays this, and beyond Julius Malema, he also shows this picture, right? So as you can see on this picture, let me make it slightly bigger, or I think you should be able to see fairly well on the screen. There's a bunch of crosses, right, as you can see on that picture. So Donald Trump is utilizing that essentially to make the argument that, look, those crosses that you see are mass graves. And Donald Trump said those are over 1,000 white farmers that have been buried. So Donald Trump categorizes this as a burial site. And he says that all those cars are essentially people on Sunday mornings that go to pay homage to all the white farmers that have been killed and buried in that place. That's how Donald Trump framed it. Again, totally bonkers. So I'm not sure. Anyways, I will comment on this later. So this is the media that Donald Trump decides to show us and the world to make the case that there's a lot of violence happening in South Africa against white farmers specifically. Henceforth, this is why, as a matter of fact, he allowed white South Africans, Afrikaners, to come to the U.S. as refugees, quote unquote. All right. So as this is happening, so you could see it from Cyril Ramaphosa's face. I mean, now depending on where you stand on the Trump orbits or not, like Trump supporters are saying, yeah, look at Julius Malema. Look at Cyril Ramaphosa, he looks very uncomfortable. Yeah, Donald Trump got him. Thank you, Mr. President. On the other side, I think the large majority of the world, and even outside of the Trump orbit, people that are more into reality, see that you had a president who showcased tremendous dignity and class in the way he responded. Cyril Ramaphosa, very classy, unflustered. Remember, this is a guy who was a chief negotiator who negotiated versus staunch racist during the apartheid. So a bit of, show making here, like Donald Trump was trying to showcase, will certainly not fluster him. So there you have it. Now, as this is playing, obviously Cyril Ramaphosa was a bit prepared. Also knowing, not a bit, he was very well prepared. He knew that, yes, this trip was about amending the relationships between South Africa and the United States of America, but he also knew there's all this accusation, right, of supposedly a genocide, persecution of white South African. So he made sure to include in his delegation people that would immediately debunk and contradict this argument of white people being persecuted. So which I think was a master stroke. Now, again, some people disagree. So this gentleman that you see up, you should be able to see. Yeah, okay. So this gentleman right here, that's Johan Rupert. So he's a billionaire. He's South Africa's richest man. He's a magnate when it comes to luxury goods. He is behind brands like Cartier and so on. So he was part of the delegation. He came with the president of South Africa. Nobody forced him. He came. He decided to come and accompany the president in this delegation. As a matter of fact, on the internet later, you have some Afrikaners, others that are saying, yeah, he's a traitor to white people. Anyways, he was part of the delegation, all right, with Cyril Ramaphosa, who supposedly come from a country where white people are persecuted and killed because they're white, according to Donald Trump. In addition to Johan Rupert that you see here, the billionaire, you also have this individual. This individual is John Steenhuisen. So Steenhuisen, he is currently the Minister of Agriculture of South Africa. This is very significant because obviously he's an Afrikaner. Again, an Afrikaner or a descendant of colonizers that came of about 400 years ago in South Africa, mainly Dutch, from the Netherlands, but you also have French, German, English, and so on. Anyway, so John Steenhuisen, he's been the minister since July of 2024. So way over, going into almost 1 year, right? In 2 months, it's going to be a year. So this is a white Afrikaner minister who is, according to Donald Trump's logic, he's the minister of a government that actually prosecutes and executes his own people. I mean, white people. That's what it would mean if we follow Donald Trump's argument, which is why I think, bringing these people is so brilliant by Cyril Ramaphosa. And this person, not only that, he is the leader of an Afrikaner dominant political party. All right. So he was the leader of the Democratic Alliance, the DA. And before joining Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet, he was the leader of the opposition. And he's an Afrikaner. How can you be the leader of the opposition in a parliament which requires a coalition of many parties? That's how the political system works in South Africa. So the opposition leader represents the entire opposition, right? When you have elections, obviously you have, in a parliamentary system, you have opposition, you have coalitions and so on. So this white guy Afrikaner was the leader, okay? Who was the opposition leader in a country where supposedly white people are persecuted and there's a genocide against white people. Go figure. That's according to Donald Trump's argument. So John Steenhuisen. Another, I think, master stroke by Team Ramaphosa was to bring some of Donald Trump's buddies, golfers, because Donald Trump spends way more time on the golf greens than he does doing other stuff. That guy's always on a golf course. As a matter of fact, he is proud to remind us on many occasions that he's won his own golf tournament. Remember? Donald Trump, I remember when he was on Air Force One on one of the things, one of his many, many, many trips. He was trying to remind the reporters or ask them if they knew that he won his own golf tournament. I was so proud about it, right? Anyways, so Mr. Golfer, in the delegation, you had these two golfers. So on this side here, underneath the pen, well, on the far, wait. So it should be on your left. And on my right, you have Ernie Els, who's one of the greatest golfers from South Africa. And then next to him, you have Retief Goosen and Ernie Els. You'll notice the names from many Afrikaners are of Deutsch origin, right? Because again, their ancestors came from the Netherlands. Not Deutschland, not Germany, but the Netherlands. They're Deutsch. Sometimes it causes confusion. Yeah, so these folks were part of the delegation. Again, people came from South Africa, and as a matter of fact, all of them, we'll talk about it when we start unpacking all this. They're a proud South African, showcasing their passport. As a matter of fact, Ernie Els pulled out his passport to show Trump that he's a proud South African. Oh, man. I mean, it can't get any better than that, man. That's rich. But Trump insisted on saying that there is a genocide here. All right. Now let's move on to, I think, the interesting part of this show. All right, this is what I find interesting, because we'll talk about the why. All right, because folks, I mean, this is unfathomable in my opinion. You could have lies propagated to this extent, but there's an agenda behind it. Well, I will separate the why in two. Let's talk briefly about on the South African side, and then we will then spend the remainder of the show on the U.S. side and on the Trump. Try to unpack the why this is happening. On the South African side, I think it's important to sort of understand how we even got to this place, why it was necessary for Cyril Ramaphosa and his team to come to the White House, all right? As I mentioned before, there were serious tensions between the two governments. It really, I think, reached a peak in terms of the tension was in mid-March. As a matter of fact, I did a couple shows on that. Remember when we were talking about the PayPal mafia? So these people of South African descent who are now all part of either Trump's cabinet, or very close advisors to Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, former co-founders of PayPal. You have Pete Botha. So they're all part of Trump's circle, right? They're all called the PayPal mafia. So people that were connected to PayPal. So when I did the show, I talked about the ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool. In mid-March, if you recall, this ambassador was kicked out of the U.S. All right, this was a South African ambassador kicked out of the United States. Why? Because during a webinar, when he was in Johannesburg, he attacked the Trump administration because of their anti-DEI practices and so on. So he essentially attacked the Trump administration of advancing racist ideologies and anti-diversity ideology, like discriminatory ideology. And as a result of that, the U.S. Categorized him as persona non grata. Persona non grata means that you're no longer welcome in the country. So when you're persona non grata, you got to pack your stuff and leave. You're no longer wanted. So essentially, the U.S. asked, which is a bit unprecedented, even for the Trump administration, when it comes at least to ambassadors of other countries. So they asked him to leave, and so he packed up his stuff and left. And if you recall, actually, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio went as far as accusing Rasool of being a race-baiting politician who hates America and Trump. Hates America and Trump. Can you imagine? But this is also kind of fascinating, right? How criticism of the policies, saying that those policies are advancing racist ideologies, is transformed where the person is now painted as hating Donald Trump and hating America. Anyways, that's how disinformation works. You kind of switch and change the narrative. Rasool ended up packing and leaving. He was very happy to leave anyways, because he's somebody who was a fighter. He is somebody who marched during the apartheid era. He fought against apartheid, and so he is an activist at heart. And so to him, he had no problem leaving. He actually said he was happy to leave. So he left the United States and went. So it is in the context of all this tension. And then you start having all these stories about white genocide in South Africa. And then you also have the tariffs. Now, the tariff obviously affected everybody, not just South Africa. Famous Liberation Day, when Trump announced sweeping tariffs for all countries around the world. Liberation Day. As a matter of fact, I've rebranded that day. It shouldn't be called Liberation Day. In my opinion, it should be called Evisceration Day, because we're eviscerated that day. It is not Liberation Day, but Evisceration Day. The U.S. population was eviscerated that day. We were punked. Because Donald Trump went from saying, yes, China will pay for all this tariff. All these countries will pay for the tariffs. But now, guess what? Now he start telling folks like Walmart, well, eat the tariffs. What happened to China and all those countries eating the tariffs? I mean, that's what Liberation Day was supposed to be. But now we're being eviscerated. Essentially, more money coming out of folks. And asking companies like Walmart that have very low profit margin, I think it was somewhere in the range of 3% profit margin. So how in the world will they survive? Anyways, so in the context of Evisceration Day and the white lies of the massacre of white people, white farmers in South Africa, the ambassador being kicked out and so on. So Ramaphosa said, I'm going to come to the U.S. And so the U.S. welcomed him to come for that meeting. But now let's move to the U.S. I know darn well Donald Trump couldn't care any less about mending the relationship with South Africa. I'm sure he could not care any less. He's not the type of guy. Donald Trump, I'm willing to bet that he might not be able to identify a single country on the African map. Maybe even South Africa, although it's in the south of the African continent, he might not even be able to identify that. Well, we shall see. But I'll be surprised if he had any interest in welcoming the South African delegation to mend the relationship. I know it had everything to do with pushing his white massacre genocide, white massacre, or the genocide of white people. That was really the intent. Having a platform to push that narrative so everybody in the world can see, because whether you like it or not, the United States remains the most powerful nation in the world. And so the president of the United States is de facto the most powerful person in the world, if not one of. So when that president speaks, the world will listen. And it has nothing to do with what Donald Trump is as a person. It's that office. That office is just a powerful office. So, and he understands that. I'm pretty sure that was the intent. Bring these folks over to push the narrative. All right, so let's go. We have a lot of debunking to do here, because everything Donald Trump said was a lie. I said everything. I didn't say some. Everything that man said during that meeting was a lie. That is how you should be treating disinformation and propaganda. You don't have to compromise on anything. We have to be staunch and radical about that when things are untrue. Everything is said, and I mean every single thing, was a lie. Let's start with this whole notion of genocide. The term is being brandished and thrown left and right without, I think, people even understanding what it is that we mean when we talk about a genocide. So I'm going to read you just a definition of what a genocide is, and then you will see if that is what's happening in South Africa. So by definition, a genocide is violence that targets individuals because of their membership of a group and aims at the destruction of a people. So this was a term that was coined by Raphael Lemkin, who was of Jewish descent, who fled from Poland and he was Polish and then came to the US, and later on was an academic at Duke University and so on. So again, Raphael Lemkin coined that term. Well, it evolved, and then there's today there is a legal definition of what a genocide is. So when you accuse somebody of genocide, there is a very there are very legal prescriptions, right? There's a legal definition. So according to the legal definition of what a genocide is, and so this is defined as part of the 1948 Genocide Convention. It is defined as follows. So it is any of 5 acts, all right? So any of 5 acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, religious group. So it is one of 5 acts that are designed to destroy in whole or in part. So what exactly are those 5 acts that constitute a genocide according to the legal definition from the 1948 Genocide Convention? Those 5 acts are as follows. 1, killing members of a group. One group, right, that's identified by religion, ethnicity, national, racial, and so on. So those are how groups are defined. So killing members of a group constitutes genocide. Causing them serious bodily or mental harm constitute genocide. 3, imposing living conditions intended to destroy the group. Genocide. 4, preventing birth. And 5, forcibly transferring children out of the group. So any of these 5 acts constitute a genocide according to the legal definition of the 1948 Geneva Convention. None of this applies to the Afrikaners in South Africa. Forcibly transferring children out of the group, it's not happening. Preventing births because they're white in South Africa is not happening. Imposing living conditions intended to destroy the group, so intended to destroy white South African. Nobody is imposing living conditions intended to destroy white South African. Quite to the contrary. The apartheid system created conditions designed to destroy black people in South Africa, and that was never corrected. Injustices that happened in the past till this day. Causing serious bodily or mental harm because they are white? No, there's no such policy in place. Killing members of a group because they are white? That is not true. We'll see how crime happens not only because people are white, but there's a crime problem in South Africa. So in terms of the definition of genocide, it is fake news to say that it applies to Afrikaners. Absolutely false. Again, I will repeat what I said. Every single thing Donald Trump said in that meeting, I repeat, every single word from his mouth was a lie. Fake news. So genocide does not happen. In terms of the statistics, as I said, everybody agrees that the government might not be the most competent in South Africa. They're making a lot of mistakes. Actually, very few people are happy with the way governance is ongoing in South Africa. There is rampant crime in many places in South Africa, which is actually associated with poverty. Crime is a result of poverty that is in part caused by also historic reasons and systemic reasons in that country. Whereas even at the end of apartheid, there's actually never real economic integration. Agreements were made so that at the end of apartheid, black people would not take vengeance against white people. That's why Mandela came and talked about the Rainbow Nation, decided for people to live in peace. But economic integration really never happened. But crime is rampant across the board. I came across some numbers here saying, for example, between 2020 and 2024, for 4 years, 225 people were killed on South African farms. We're talking about deaths on the farms because Trump seems to say that the farmers are killed and they're killed because they are white. That's what he said, which is a lie again. Farmers are not killed because they're white. As a matter of fact, more black people on farms are killed than white people. So this number says that in 4 years, 225 people were killed on farms, and of those deaths, 101 were black. okay, current or former workers, and 53 were farmers. I mean, come on, the large majority were black on farms. So when Donald Trump again says that white people are killed on farms and they're targeted because they are white, he is lying. Okay? I'm not even going to say it's false. Let's just use the crude term, it's a lie. Fake news, he's lying. Crime is a problem, but it's affecting everybody. Now, let's go on to that picture of crosses that I showed earlier. This picture of crosses. How pathetic. I don't know who prepared this information and gave it to the president of the United States to make such a fool of himself in front of the world audience. If I was Donald Trump, I would fire my advisors. You would get in serious trouble because they made him look really bad. Obviously, he didn't do that research. He was given that material. And he said that these white crosses were burial sites where over 1,000 white farmers were buried, and that these cars were family members of those farmers going and paying homage on a Sunday. 1,000% false. That's embarrassing to say such enormities. This is not a burial site. This was a protest that these people, Afrikaners, put crosses. That was a 2020 protest. They were marching and protesting, showcasing that white people are dying on farms, and so that was a protest. This is not a burial site. That is embarrassing for the president of the United States to go ahead and spew such big lies. The advisors that gave him that information should be fired because that is ridiculous. You're making the whole nation look bad by having the president believe something that is clearly false. All right. In terms of white Afrikaners themselves, it was fascinating. Every single person who came with Cyril Ramaphosa on that on the other trip, starting with Johan Rupert, he told Donald Trump that there's crime affecting everybody, that it's not just affecting white South African, it's affecting black South African as well. He said he has family members on farms. John Steenhuisen, remember the Minister of Agriculture? During that meeting, he said there's no crime, there's no genocide against white South African or any else. All right. You see the picture here? Yes, you should see the picture. Ernie Els and Retief Goosen. Ernie Els, as a matter of fact, pulled out his passport to show that he's a proud South African. There's no crime against South African. Now, that song by Julius Malema that Donald Trump played, and let's just put the picture. Julius Malema, this guy, remember? Make the picture a bit smaller. The song that he played, Kill the Boer, Kill the Boer. Because Donald Trump, remember, he said that this guy is racist, which is kind of crazy because, first of all, Julius Malema is not part of the government. This guy was actually kicked out of the ANC. The ANC is the African National Congress. It's the party of Mandela and Ramaphosa. So they kicked Julius Malema out of the ANC over a decade ago. They actually can't even stand each other. But Malema, who is a firebrand, he's somebody who says black people should not apologize for anything, but rather it's white people who owe black people an apology. Those are his statements. But the song, Kill the Boer, or Kill the Farmer, is actually officially named Dubula Ibunyu. Dubula Ibunyu, that's the name of that song. And it's a song in Xhosa language, which emerged around in the 1980s, right? And it was a song that was created in the 80s to fight unjust system of segregation. And they were taken to court, and the courts have ruled that that song does not literally mean kill white farmers. The court have ruled on that. An appeal was made. that went all the way to the Supreme Court last year in 2024. And here's what the Supreme Court of South Africa said. They said, any reasonably well-informed person would see it as a historic struggle song with the performance and gesture to go with it as a provocative means of advancing the agenda. This song was ruled all the way to the Supreme Court as a historic struggle song. Julius Malema did not create that song. All right. So when he say "Dubulai Bunu" or "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," he didn't create that song. Secondly, it's a song from the 80s. It's a song that was created during the violent apartheid regime. It was a song of struggle. Now he knows what he's doing clearly. He's taking it because he wants to shock opinion. He's one of those politicians. Every country has politicians that can be qualified as extremists. He's an extremist in the South African context. He's very provocative. He knows what he's doing. But it is by no way means a literal call to killing the Boer. There are many videos of Julius Malema himself where he says, he's telling white people, stop being such a crybaby. Nobody's going to kill you. He himself said the song doesn't mean that they want to kill South Africans, but none of that was played. So it is this sort of narratives, right? That is just nuts. All right, so let's jump. How long has it been since we've been on this show? I wanted to keep this short. Oh my, 36 minutes already. So why exactly, right, is Donald Trump intent on pushing this clearly false narrative? Clearly false. Why are they intent on doing that? So I came up with 3 hypotheses. One, I think it is a way to justify the ludicrous admission of Afrikaners as refugees in the United States. You need to be able to justify that, and this provided a perfect platform to further advance the narrative that South Africans are, white South Africans are persecuted. Hence why we have this admission program where we're admitting them as refugees. So he had to justify that decision. 2, could be the result of Elon Musk, who is in Donald Trump's ear, who's wanting to utilize this white victimhood ideology that has been pushed for a while by groups such as AfriForum and Solidarity, that are Afrikaner groups. And he clinged on to that to bring that agenda into the White House and use it as a pressure mechanism against the South African government to advance his own Starlink agenda. Remember, I mentioned the Starlink agenda. And I'll elaborate a bit more. And hypothesis number 3 could be the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, which is the only United Nations body that has the authority to essentially work on cases where countries are accusing each other, because South Africa filed a case against Israel at the ICJ, accusing Israel of committing genocide against Gaza, against Palestinians. And so it could be that this is used as a way to also punish Israeli and South Africa, and kind of turn the narrative. Say South Africa is accusing them of genocide. Well, we're accusing you of a genocide against white people. A confluence of factors. So let's just go through them very quickly, and then I'll end the show. Let's start by the 3rd hypothesis, the ICJ. I don't give it much credence. The more you look into it, no. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump was asked by a reporter about the ICJ case, and he had no clue what the reporter was talking about, right? So I don't think that discussion even happened as he was preparing for this meeting, or he would have remembered. He didn't realize that the ICJ was International Court of Justice. So Cyril Ramaphosa had to clarify the question to Donald Trump. So Donald Trump did not even factor in that case, which was a bit surprising, because that was a big one in an international community. That's a big one, where Israel is accused of committing genocide against a Palestinian because of those 5 acts that constitute a genocide according to the legal definition. Oh yeah, Israel is certainly doing that against Gazans, Palestinians. So that hypothesis, could be part of it in some people in Trump's orbit, but maybe not Donald Trump. The second hypothesis, when it comes to Elon Musk utilizing the weight of the White House to advance his Starlink agenda, it is possible because Starlink is the satellite company, right, that Elon Musk started, which has been obtaining licenses in many countries around the world, but many African countries, they were struggling to get licenses because some of those countries have local contents laws that requires shares like local companies to be created for international entities and to provide some of the shares to some of the locals. It's called local content laws. So countries like Namibia, countries like Somalia and others were refusing to give licenses to Elon Musk because Elon Musk did not want to abide to the local content laws. But then ever since Trump came in power, he's been getting more and more licenses. Like Somalia, for example, boom, suddenly he's given a license. So it is possible because he wants to blanket the entire continent. And right now, his own country of origin kind of looks bad too, that he's not able to get a license in his country, but he does not want to abide to the local content laws. So it is possible that this could be part of it. But I think the first one is the most likely. It's the justification of this whole refugee program. You really have to understand how it is all interconnected. Because, the fact that those fake refugees, because they're not even real refugees, the fact that those 49 or I think 59 Afrikaners came into the United States as refugees, that was the end of a long process, a process that began even when Trump was first in power. Because you have these two groups in South Africa, one called AfriForum, the other one called Solidarity. These are civil society, so NGOs that are advancing policies towards, the interest of Afrikaner populations. As a matter of fact, remember that town I was talking about, Orania? I will do a show just on Orania because that's one of the biggest issues I have with South Afrikaners is how they have a city called Orania where Black people are not allowed to live until this day. It's a city created by Afrikaners. The founders of that city were people that were nostalgic about our apartheid, that never really agreed to apartheid being eliminated. Started creating that city about 30 years ago. It's now a big city, but Black people are not allowed to live in that city. It's called Orania. Okay, I digress. We'll talk about this on a different show. But AfriForum and Solidarity had really been pushing the narrative across the world, going into extreme right circles in the US, in places like Fox News and so on. They had been advancing the narrative for a while that there's a genocide, there's a slow white genocide. Even Elon Musk had talked about a slow white genocide happening in South Africa. So they had been pushing the narrative. You have to understand that in South Africa, the way things are, like a white person almost has zero chance of becoming president after apartheid and so on. That's just the reality. Black people are the majority. And so people like AfriForum and so on, somewhere they have a secession agenda too, where they want self-determination so they can have their own political system. Some of them really even want separation and have more political autonomy. Because the way things are, it's just not going to happen. Historically, it's a problem. I hope that over time, you will have a white candidate who can actually have a narrative that will be able to gain big support and eventually rise to the presidency in that country. But that's just a reality. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So these people have been pushing the narrative, sticking it to the South African government, a narrative of genocide. And suddenly it has gotten to the point where that issue has taken some real legs and it has made it all the way to the White House. And in Donald Trump's orbit, you do have a few white supremacists. You best believe that believe in this idea of the big replacement, the white replacement, and so on, the big replacement theory. And so when you have a narrative of white people being targeted in South Africa, white people are in danger, it fits this white replacement narrative, this white victimhood narrative. And so you have folks that cling on to that idea and bring it to the forefront and now use the weight of the president of the United States to publicly push that agenda. And then bring those fake refugees, because they are not refugees by definition. You have real refugees from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from Sudan, places where there's real conflict. People are fleeing their homes. Their lives are in danger day to day. That is not the case of the white Afrikaners. And not just because I'm saying, you saw all those white people who came with Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House. They are South Africans. They themselves are talking about this being a false narrative. All right. So this is really what happens. So it's a narrative that's there. So I think us in the G-PAC, in the Global PAC, we cannot let lies like this go unchecked. We need to respond to it against them with the same energy, which is why I said you need to have a very staunch response. Everything that Donald Trump said in that meeting was a lie. We do not compromise on that. The truth is the truth, no matter who says it, but that was a clear lie. We cannot stand for it. Because you know what? The more you repeat a lie, the more it will tend to not be seen as the truth. I think Donald Trump is an expert in that. He's showed us many times. Just by reframing, rewriting history, reinventing, reinterpreting things. And then now people start taking it as the truth. So we cannot stand for that. We need to fight it with the same energy. For the entire Global PAC, this is a very important issue. Because when they say they're pushing a narrative that white people are being killed in South Africa, when they say they are being killed, but who is doing the killing according to this narrative? Who? Black people. So they're accusing essentially black people of killing white people, minorities killing white people. And it all circles back to this whole big replacement theory, where it's black and brown people that are wanting to eliminate Western civilization. Elon Musk many times has talked about the perils of Western civilization. I can assure you he's not talking about black people. So we cannot stand for this narrative. We have to fight it with serious energy. Otherwise, this sort of narrative we will end up continuing. I had left a picture of Julius Malema. So yeah. So in conclusion, look, and this was fake news at its worst. We cannot stand idle. The Global PAC, the global Pan-African communities, this sort of issues concerns all of us. False narratives that tend to paint black people in Africa in a certain way, that is false. It continues to feed these false agendas. We cannot stand for it. This is a lie. There is no white genocide happening in South Africa, period. There is a crime problem. There is no white genocide happening in South Africa. Stating the opposite is just a blatant lie. Donald Trump lied. But thank God, many people around the world are just baffled more than anything, because everybody knows there's no genocide in South Africa. Even South Africa themselves are saying there's no genocide in South Africa. So yeah. Anyhow, so I will end up here. So to conclude the show, as has become the tradition, I will finish with a quote by Nelson Mandela. And so this quote says, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." That is very applicable to even what we talked about, because Donald Trump is advancing disinformation. I mean, this is some crazy Orwellian twist. Remember the 1984 book by George Orwell? This is it's a dystopian Orwellian twist where essentially they're advancing propaganda, disinformation. This is manipulation, because it is not the truth. And if we leave it unchecked, it will end up being the truth. So we need education. We need to educate ourselves on what is happening. Don't just take people's narrative at face value. Dig deep. As a matter of fact, even what I'm saying, if you're part of this platform, I encourage you to do your research. Find out, am I talking BS? Am I talking the truth? Check me. If you feel like what I'm saying is BS, send your comment. Debate is needed, but we need to educate ourselves. When we want to change things, education is a very, very powerful tool, because lack of education is what demagogues typically use to manipulate us. It behooves us to be educated on the issues at hand, especially the issues that affect our well-being in the Global PAC, the Global Pan-African Community, or the Global Diaspora, the Global Pan-African Diaspora. So there you have it. It's let's end with this. I already gave you a quote. This, I wanted to mention it. When I was growing up in Belgium, I had this teacher who would show us videos and movies about freedom fighters, about people fighting for freedom. And so there's a cry that I learned back then that has stayed with me for many years. It's a cry that Nelson Mandela used with his raised fist, and many freedom fighters have used it. And it says, Amandla, Amandla. So it's, when you say Amandla, which means power in the Zulu language, the Nguni and Xhosa language, those are languages from South Africa. So like freedom fighters or people leading marches would yell, Amandla, Amandla, which means power. And the people would reply, Awetu, or Ngwawetu, Ngwawetu, which means power to the people. So say, Amandla, Ngwawetu, Amandla, Ngwawetu. It just stayed with me. I'm not South African. I don't speak the language. But I remember we had watched, movies by Steve Biko and so on. So it's just fascinating. So yeah, so this is what I'll leave you with today. Amandla Ngwawetu, power to the people. Folks, we are a very powerful people. Power to the people. Ngwawetu. We are a very strong and special people. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. More importantly, we are the Global PAC. So until next time, peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. Thank you for your support. Remember, if you've not subscribed yet, there's 2 things you can do that will help us tremendously. 1, click on the subscribe button. It allows you to become part of this platform, this community, so we can grow together as the community is growing, as the platform is growing. 2, you can click on share. It only takes a second. If you think that there's somebody else in your network that can benefit from this message, click on the share button, get them the message, and they can benefit from this. So subscribe and share. Thank you very much for doing that. Until next time, I am Tony Mfumu Simba Kwambamba Ngumbu. Thank you very much, and let's get to work. We are the Global PAC.